Hey again, Dr. Mashburn. And so today we're going to talk about blood typing and genetics. And I want to give a quick overview, kind of a quick genetics lab. I find that a lot of students don't have a good background in this, and so I need to do some reviewing so I don't use terms that you don't understand. So for those of you who've had biology, this will probably be a lot of review. For those of you who don't, keep up, pay attention. All right, so what's a gene? A gene is that part of the DNA that codes for a protein. Okay, so remember, genes code for proteins, and so our DNA is our genetic blueprint. We can divide DNA into chromosomes, and each chromosome contains hundreds and hundreds of genes. And we have 46 chromosomes in our cells. So all of our cells, our skin cells, our blood cells, our muscle cells, our nervous cells, all of these cells have 46 chromosomes, but we have 23 pair of chromosomes. So there's 46 of these chromosomes, but they're paired. Okay, so we have like chromosome 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 23 pairs. But if you were to count these individually, there would be 46 individual chromosomes that are paired as to 23 pairs. And they're pairs because one comes from your mom and one comes from your dad. So when I say all cells have 46 chromosomes, that does not include what are called the gametes. And the gametes are what you call your reproductive cells, or your egg and your sperm. And your egg and sperm only have one set of 23 chromosomes that contain these genes. And that is so when you have the sperm and egg joined together during reproduction, you have 23 chromosomes from mom, 23 from dad, and that gives the child the total of 46 chromosomes. Okay, we're going to talk about this a little more in reproduction. But when you've been talking about hopefully mitosis and meiosis at some point during your journey, you learned that mitosis is how you divide cells and make more and more and more cells. Well, during mitosis, one cell, like a skin cell, has 46 chromosomes, and then when it divides, there are two cells, and they each have 46. And again, we'll talk about details later. But there's another process called meiosis. And this is how your gametes are made. So the kind of the beginning cells that become sperm and egg, they start out as 46, but when they divide, you get cells that only have 23 in them. And again, we'll do more details later on how that works. But by having these 20 cells with 23 chromosomes, you put them together, you get 46, and now your child has the correct number of chromosomes. Okay? So there's a lot of terminology that goes with genetics, and so I'm going to just kind of go over these terms because for some of you, again, it's brand new, and some of you it's totally review for you. So an allele, that's a term that we use, and that's just a letter that represents a gene. Okay, so when we're kind of visually writing down about genes and chromosomes and things like that, we say that the gene, we just give it a letter. It's kind of a shorthand, so that's called the allele. So, for example, if I'm talking about blonde or blue eyes and brown eyes, I may say if you have the gene for brown eyes, I may say, I'm just going to use a shorthand, big B. I may say the shorthand allele, the way I'm going to represent blue eyes, would be a little b. Okay, so that's just a representation. So the allele is the letter that represents the gene. Now, you have what's called a genotype and a phenotype. The genotype are the actual alleles that the person has. So remember, you're going to have two alleles. You have one from your mom, one from your dad. So you may be a big T, or you may be a big T, little t. That's your genotype. Which two alleles do you have? Okay, do you have big B, or do you have little b, or big B, little b? That's your genotype, the alleles that you have, the set of alleles that you have. The phenotype is what is that trait that is showing up in you. Okay, so if I have big B, I'm going to have brown eyes. Okay, if I have little b, I'm going to have blue eyes. And if I have big B, I'm going to have brown eyes. Okay, that's what that means. So the phenotype is what do you see. So for the example here, we have big T and little t. Big T stands for tall. Little t stands for short. So if you have two big T's, you're tall. If you have two little t's, you're short. If you have one big T, one little t, you're kind of medium height. That's kind of where we're going with that. Okay? So the reason we use capital letters and small letters is that some traits, some genes dominate. So if you have that gene, it doesn't matter what other gene you have. If you have one of those genes, that dominant trait, it takes over. Okay, it's the dominant trait. So we usually use a big letter. The recessive trait, we use a little letter, and that's the one, if there's a dominant trait around, it's not going to show up. The only way for the recessive gene to show up is if you have two of them. Okay, so here I'm showing you that big B is dominant. Brown eyes is dominant. If I have two big B's, you're going to have brown eyes. If I have one big B, you're going to have brown eyes. To get blue eyes, you've got to have two recessive genes. Okay, hopefully you've heard of this before. All right, so two more terms that we use when we're describing genetic traits is we say you're homozygous or heterozygous. So homozygous means you have two of the same gene, so like big T, or little t, and heterozygous means you have two different alleles, a big T and a little t. And this is important because I'm going to use these kind of terminologies as I go forward and also in my exam, so you want to make sure you understand what those mean. Now there are some types of genes that are expressed, they have more than two alleles. They actually have, more than two choices, and one of those is blood groups. So obviously the one that we're going to talk about today is kind of complex. It's not your typical big B, little b. You actually have what's called a big I and a little I. So the big I is dominant, and the little I is recessive. And so the dominant I comes with a big A and a big B, and the little I has nothing. That's because the reason we have the big I, the A, big I, B is these are co-dominant. All right, so if you have IA, you have A blood. Okay, if you have IB, you have B blood. But because they're co-dominant, if you have IA, IB, you have AB blood. They're co-dominant. They will both be expressed at the same time. This little I, that's going to be the O blood. And for simplicity, I don't use the I's as we're moving forward. I just use A and B because it just makes drawing it out on your paper a whole lot easier. So you'll get the hang of it. Just bear with me. So we're going to do a Punnett square, and so again, you may have done this before, and this is just a way to figure out what chance a child has of having a certain genotype and phenotype. Okay, so the father's genes, okay, he is, on this particular example, heterozygous. There's a big and a little, two different alleles. The mother is homozygous. They're the same. Okay, so let's say in this case, big B is brown hair and little b is blonde hair. Okay, so this father has big B, little b. So his genotype is big B, little b. His phenotype, what you see, is going to be brown hair. The mother's genotype is little b, little b. Her phenotype is blonde hair, what you see. So you have basically a 1 in 4 chance every time the sperm and egg come together. There's a 1 in 4 chance of one of these combinations are going to occur because you've got sperm that have big B's and little b's. You have eggs that have a little b and little b. So whatever particular combination of sperm and egg come together, you're going to get the child. So let's say in this particular case, the egg that's little b and the sperm that's big B come together. So the child is big B, little b. That's the genotype. What's the phenotype? Brown. In this case, a different egg that happens to be little b and a different sperm that happens to be big B, same thing. Genotype big B, little b, phenotype brown. All right, what if one of the sperm has that little b? Well, mom's got a little b. You're going to be little b, little b. That is the genotype. All right, the phenotype is blonde. And here the phenotype is blonde. Now, so theoretically, if a mother and father had 4 kids, they could have 2 brown-haired kids and 2 blonde-haired kids. The problem is, at each time mother and father have sex and have the sperm and egg come together, you have the chance. All of these can happen. Okay, so you can't just say if someone's going to have 4 kids, they're going to get each one of these. They might, or every child could be blonde. Every child could be brown, because every time you start over with the sperm and egg come together, you have the same chance of any of these occurring. So what you want to say is, what is the chance that they're going to have the genotype big B little b? Okay, so genotype. So you can say it's 2 to 2 or 50%. So 50% that they'll be big B, big B, big B little b, or little b, little b. You can say phenotype. What is the chance that they'll be blonde-haired? 50%. What's the chance they'll be brown-haired? 50%. Okay? So that's how that works. All right, so we're going to do, let me do another one. Let me put in another slide here. Hang on just a second. Give me just a second. Here we go. Well, it's not working for me. Let's see if I can erase this. Hang on. Sorry about that. I thought I had another slide in there, but it did not show up. Technology. You just never know sometimes. Eraser. How about we just erase? There we go. Sometimes you just have to use the old-fashioned way. All right. Nothing like live television. Okay, so let's just do another one to give you another example of how that works. Let's say this time, draw a little square, and let's say our mom is heterozygous for hair color. So heterozygous, that means she's going to be big B, little b. Let's say dad is still heterozygous for hair color. So he's big B, little b. All right, so what are the chances of the children having brown hair? In this case, all right, mom and dad, these particular sperm and egg come together, big B, big B. And then we're going to do this too. It's kind of like a multiplication table. So this one and this one, big B, little b. This one, or I'm sorry, this one, and this one, big B, little b, and now this one and this one. All right, so this one's going to have brown hair, this one has brown hair, that one has brown hair. So this is the only one with blonde hair. So what is the chances, the percentages for the genotype? Well, 1, 2, so you have 1 big B, 2 big B, little b's, and 1 little b, little b. So the genotype is going to be 1 to 2 to 1, or you can say 25%, 50%, 25%. That's the genotype. That's the chances that children could have those genotypes. The phenotypes, well, you've got 3 brown hairs and just 1 blonde. So you have a 75% chance of being brown and just 25% of being blonde. All right, so that's how that works, and we're going to have some practice for you to work on that as well. All right, so when we talk about, let me see. All right, you know what? I'm going to stop here. We're going to pick up this in another video. That way you can take a break and look and kind of go back, and I'll start this in a new video. That sounds like a good job. 13 minutes on a video can get a little long-winded. I'll see you in a minute.